Hello, my name is Joshua Sim, and for my 476A project, I'll be going over both a passive and active suspension system of a quarter car, and I wanted to see how they react differently due to any road disturbances. So I'm sure almost all of you while driving a vehicle have experienced bad roads, and this could include potholes and bumpy roads. Like expected, these irregularities in the road can cause disturbances such as bouncing and rolling of the car. This is not only bad for the driver experience, but it can also affect the safety conditions of driving. In order to combat these driving disturbances, vehicles have suspension systems. And you may ask, what is a suspension system? So a suspension system consists of a combination of springs and dampers, which work together to both deflect and absorb the shock from the road going to the body of the car. For my project, one of the suspension systems I'll be observing is a passive suspension system of a quarter car model. And this model consists of a sprung mass, which is the body of the car, the unsprung mass, which is the wheels and the suspension system, the spring coefficient, damping coefficient, and the tire stiffness. So here's the free body diagram of the passive suspension system, along with any of the appropriate equations and motions. So the sprung mass equation, the 1 over ms represents the sprung mass, the cs represents the damping coefficient of the sprung mass, the ks represents the spring coefficient sprung mass. For the unsprung mass equation, the 1 over mu is the unsprung mass, the ks is the spring coefficient of the sprung mass, kt is the tire stiffness, and cs is the damping coefficient of the sprung mass. These will later be plugged into the Simulink, and it will be used to simulate a suspension system. So what about an active suspension system? Active suspension systems are similar to passive systems, but this one has a hydraulic actuator attached, which is the UA right here in the equation. And this is utilized by a PID controller that takes corrective action to reduce any error, and a tuned proportional gain, integral, and derivative time is inputted into that controller, and that control force is outputted by the hydraulic actuator. For the parameters of the quarter car system, I chose to use my own car, which is a Toyota Corolla, and I wanted to see how it would react to a bumpy road with and without an active suspension system. So the mass of the car body is the mass of a Corolla car body, and the rest of the values were generic suspension values that I just looked up online. So plugging our values into the damping ratio equation, we get a value of 0.204, and this means the system should be underdamped. The ideal damping ratio for a car is usually around 0.3. So in my experiment, I'll see if an active suspension system could actually improve this value. So for my simulating model, the block in the blue represent the equation of motion from the sprung mass, while the box in the green box represents the unsprung mass. The red box right here is the road input. And for the road input, I just used a sine wave, which is a 5-inch bump that keeps repeating. And for the tire mass, the displacement doesn't change at all, while the mass of the car body has small changes in displacement in the beginning. And the oscillations going from 0 and under 0 proves that this is an underdamped system. Like my passive suspension system, the block of the sprung mass and unsprung mass remain the same. And in the order to implement a PID controller and a hydraulic actuator, the red box right here shows the added control force, and the purple box indicates the added PID controller. The road input for the active suspension system remains the same at 5 inches. And for the mass of the tires, there's an oscillation at the beginning and the displacement stabilizes down to about max of 2.2 inches. And for the mass of the car body, there are also small oscillations, but it ends up stabilizing at a displacement of 2.2 inches as well. So in the end, this project proves that these systems are indeed underdamped. And a reduction of displacement on the active system indicates that an active suspension system does improve the damping coefficient. And this reduces displacement on any road disturbances for the drivers in the car. Thank you.